One of your favorite things about composting is going to be harvesting the gardener's gold and adding it to your soil. 6 months ago, this was apple cores and slimy spinach, shredded leaves, old coffee grounds, and now it's rich, dark compost. What a transformation! This compost will feed your soil, making your garden strong, healthy, and happy. And the next harvest will be one that feeds you and your family. Are you ready for healthy, delicious vegetables and gorgeous flowers? Welcome back for video 3 of Quick Start to Composting. If we haven't met yet, I'm Amy Landers. Thank you for joining me. I'm so glad that you're here. My husband Colby and I are the gardeners and bloggers behind GardensThatMatter.com, where we teach families how to create beautiful, bountiful gardens. Once again, thank you to everyone who commented or sent emails about videos 1 and 2. It's really exciting to hear about what you're creating. And if you've started building your bin, congratulations, you're an official composter. You're taking trash and turning it into treasure. Today, I'm going to reveal the treasure inside this finished compost bin. And I'm going to give you 3 tips to speed up your composting process so you can get to your treasure sooner. Let's start with a review of video 1 and 2. You can go back and watch those if you missed them, but here are a few of the highlights. Compost happens when we put together organic matter and add air and water and give it time to heat up and decompose. When you add compost to your soil, it forms humus, a key ingredient in fertile soil. Composting has so many benefits. It improves soil structure, and it increases soil's ability to hold water. It adds nutrients to the soil and makes existing soil nutrients more available for plants. Compost adds life to the soil, and it also helps suppress some diseases. And that's not all. Composting reduces waste that would otherwise go to landfills and incinerators. Composting reduces pollution and erosion. Compost can even help clean up pollution. When we compost, we decrease our need for fossil fuels, and composting helps you close the loop. Waste becomes resource. Compost is nothing short of awesome. It's great for the planet, and it's great for your own patch of soil. Next, we talked about what you can compost and what you should leave out of your pile. I won't recap all those right now, but be sure to download your free infographic. And you got our No Fuss Compost Bin workbook. I showed you how to build our favorite type of composting container, the simple, inexpensive wire bin. And we talked about how to pick that perfect, convenient place for your bin. Have you done that? Check. We've talked about 2 styles of composting, batch and as-you-go. This wire bin is an as-you-go pile that we've filled with kitchen scraps and leaves. We stopped adding to it about 6 months ago. I think we've turned it once, but otherwise, we've just let it decompose over time. You can see that it's shrunk down to about 1/3 of its original size, and that's pretty normal. As I've said before, decomposition is going to happen no matter what, so you can be a laid-back composter and still have good results in 6 to 12 months. But what if you don't want to wait that long? Well, before we break open this bin, let's talk about how to get compost faster. Here are 3 ways to speed up your composting. Number 1, start with smaller materials. So, for example, your leaves could be shredded before putting them in your bin. When you increase the surface area of your materials, they will decompose faster. Naturally, when you mow your grass, the clippings get shredded into tiny bits. You can also use your lawnmower to shred up leaves, weeds, and other garden waste before you add it to your bin. Using a lawnmower with a bag attached is an awesome composting tool. Another option for shredding material is a chipper shredder. These are a little more expensive and less common for backyard gardeners. However, if you want to make a big batch of compost, it might be worth finding one to borrow or rent for a day. These allow you to chip up small pieces of wood and shred up leaves and garden waste. If you have access to one, they are really handy. Now, if mowing or chipping your yard waste aren't options for you, you can cut up materials with a machete or garden shears. You can also just rip it and tear it up into small pieces with your hands. Junk mail and other paper can be shredded with a standard office shredder or torn up by hand. Fruits, vegetables, and other food scraps can be chopped, torn and crushed into small bits before putting them in your collection pail. Some people even blend up their kitchen scraps before adding them to their bin. You probably don't need to go that far unless you're trying to break a compost speed record, but it is an option. Number 2. Another way to speed up your composting is to get your combination of greens and browns just right, which usually means adding plenty of greens. Especially in autumn, when dry brown materials like leaves are abundant, you may need to be very intentional about adding green. Let's take a deeper look at some nitrogen-rich materials that will help get your pile decomposing hot and fast. We've already talked about some great sources like fresh grass clippings and garden waste, kitchen waste, and coffee grounds. Hair is also very high in nitrogen. Human and pet hair are both good. Another nitrogen source that might be a little surprising is urine. You could think of this as a side benefit if you have boys, like I do, who sometimes can't hold it long enough to go inside. You can suggest that they go on the compost bin instead. You could also get a bag of alfalfa meal or pellets from the feed store or blood meal from the garden supply store. These are easy to sprinkle in between the layers of shredded leaves. Finding extra nitrogen-rich materials is also a great way to get your community involved. Maybe you have neighbors who would donate their grass clippings or kitchen scraps. Go ahead and get their leaves while you're at it. If you have coffee regularly at work or church, maybe you can bring the coffee grounds home. You'll be saving the earth while making more compost for your garden. Now, there is such a thing as too much nitrogen, and it can make your pile stinky and even a little slimy. If you're going to work on perfecting this balance to speed up your composting, I recommend that you take time to learn more about the carbon-nitrogen ratios of the materials you're thinking of using. Number 3. Now we'll get to the third, and in my opinion, best way to speed up composting. Turn, baby, turn. Turning your compost is not necessary, but it will definitely speed decomposition along. It adds oxygen and aerates your pile. It mixes up the materials, so the less decomposed materials on the outside and top get turned into the center where the action is happening. And any matted materials get fluffed back up. The aeration and mixing will get your compost hot, and that means faster breakdown. Turning your pile also gives you a chance to adjust things like moisture and the amounts of browns and greens in your pile. When you get in there, you'll know if your pile is too dry and needs some extra water or too wet. You'll want to add extra brown materials if your pile smells like ammonia. That's a good clue that you have too many greens. And on the other hand, if your pile doesn't seem to be doing anything at all, you can add more greens to fire it back up. How often you turn depends on your goal. Again, you don't have to turn it all, or you can turn a few times. At the most extreme end of the spectrum, there's the Berkeley compost method, where you can get compost in 18 days by turning it about 7 times. I haven't tried this yet, but I'm curious, and I'll let you know if I do. Let's head out to the pasture where I have a bin that is ready to turn. This is one of our simple compost heaps out near the barn. It's a mix of leaves, horse manure, grass clippings, and spoiled hay. We've got several like this around the farm, and this one was just turned a few days ago. It should be ready just in time for our spring garden planting. And this is one of our wire bins. It's kind of a test bin. We're curious to see how it compares to the heap. And we're also wondering, how does our mix of horse manure and leaves, grass clippings, and hay compared to the kitchen waste bin that's closer to the house? Today, I'm going to demonstrate how to turn the material in this bin. The easiest way to do this is to take the empty bin and set it right next to your pile, and then turn it as you move the material back into the bin. So first, make sure your area is clear and level. Next, unhook your wire. You can unwind the wires, or you can get a helper and lift the bin right off the top. Do you remember how we started our pile in video 2? Roughage. We want a nice layer of coarse material so we've got good drainage and air circulation. I've got some sticks here. Next, I'm going to turn the material back into our bin. What I'm going to try to do is get this outer material on the inside of the bin in the center. And that way, the inner material that's more broken down will end up on the outside of our new bin. I'll mix it as I go and break up any matted material that I find. As I'm turning and mixing, I'm paying attention to how wet the material is. If it's too dry, I'll add water. If it's too soggy, I'll add some more dry browns. Remember, we're going for a wrung-out sponge. As I'm getting down to the bottom, I'm getting into that coarse material that I laid down when I first created the bin. I'm just going to pull it out and lay it to the side. I can use it for my next turn. If a little bit gets mixed in, it's no problem. All right, there we go. A turned bin. Whew. You can see how much it fluffed up with the addition of all that air. We're expecting quite a bit of rain, so I'm going to put a makeshift lid on top that's made out of scrap tin. This is a quick and easy solution to make sure my bin doesn't get too waterlogged. Now our compost microbes have plenty of air and water. They're going to keep breaking down that nitrogen and carbon-rich material. The pile is going to heat back up again as they do their work. Depending on our schedule, I might turn this pile again once it cools back down. Turning is one of the best ways to keep your pile active and make compost faster. Are you ready to see some finished compost? While I head back to the house, let me tell you how you'll know when your compost is finished. What is finished compost? In composting terms, finished means that the compost is stable and ready to use in your yard and garden. The process of decomposition has slowed down, and the compost doesn't heat back up when you turn or water your pile. It's well on its way to becoming the beneficial humus we talked about in video number 1. Other names for finished compost are cured, aged, or mature compost. If you use unfinished compost, it will continue decomposing in your garden, which isn't a big deal in fall or winter, but you'll want to be careful if you add unfinished compost during the growing season. It may compete with your plants for nitrogen and even stunt their growth. Also, many seeds don't germinate as well in unfinished compost, so you'll want to be sure your compost is finished. You'll know your compost is finished when the original materials are mostly unidentifiable. You won't be able to tell that something is a banana peel or a maple leaf. Things like wood chips and avocado pits may still be around, but you can screen those out and put them into your bin for another go-round. Finished compost has a nice, earthy smell. It is dark brown or black in color. It has a uniform texture, a crumbly sponginess, and it is cool to the touch. If you find earthworms in your compost pile, that's a good sign it's ready to use. Earthworms won't venture up into a hot pile. Okay, now it's time. Let's break open this bin and see how it looks inside. The first thing I'm going to do is take the leaves off the top. I'm just going to move these to this back bin. It's fairly new, and as you can see, it's a great example of why you should put your bin on level ground. We actually did start with a leveled pad of mulch, but several inches of rain and we've got the leaning tower of compost. Putting these leaves on top isn't going to hurt. Okay, that should do it. Now I'm going to unwrap the wires at the seam. You could also pull the bin right off the top. All right, let me move this fencing out of the way. I'm going to bring back the wheelbarrow and the sifter. Oof. Take a look at that rich, dark, beautiful compost. Just needs a little bit of sifting. We use a simple homemade sifter to screen our compost. The sifter catches any large, less decomposed pieces, like the occasional stick or corn cob. We'll just take these and put them in our next compost pile. A sifter isn't necessary, but we like the way it gives us a nice uniform consistency. Makes the compost easy to add to our soil, use as mulch, or put in our houseplants. We're going to take what we harvest today and add it to a new bed that we're preparing for garlic. I think we're going to plant it next week. If we have any extra, we'll save it for spring plantings. Our garden will be very happy. There you go. Now you'll know when your compost is ready and some ways to speed it up if you'd like. I hope you found this free video series helpful. Composting really is the cornerstone of a healthy garden and a sustainable home, and you are on your way. Thanks again for watching. From our family to yours, all the best in creating a garden that matters. I'm going to get back to sifting compost, and I'll see you again soon.